Welcome to the Yoga PodShop, part podcast, part workshop, but all things yoga. I'm your host, Casey Nicole. Joining me today, I have my co-host, Samantha Wiesner, along with other guests. And today's topic is going to be on business of yoga. As always, all of our sessions are recorded and available for your viewing afterwards. We hope you enjoy.
By the way, Alyssa, I'm Sam. I don't think
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Cool.
Oh yeah, you guys haven't met each other before.
No. Yeah.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but Alyssa, you live in Modesto, correct?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. And you mostly teach in Modesto.
For the most part, kind of, in surrounding cities.
Cool. Yay.
Cool.
Well, then we're all fam here.
Yeah, very familiar.
Modesto fam.
Cool. Are you from Modesto as well, Sam?
I lived there for about 10 years. I moved back to the East Coast during COVID in 2020. Okay. Yeah. So it's now been a while, but Modesto still very much feels like home. Whenever I watched the other day, it was, this is not the best thing that Modesto is known for, but the Peterson, the Lacey Peterson thing. That was on the other day, and I made my partner watch it, and I'm like, oh, I know that place, and I know that place. That's my favorite breakfast spot.
Such a Modesto highlight, right?
I know. But anytime that I get to see some of Modesto, I'm like, oh, anyway.
Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah, Sam was my ride or die at Elevate, and went through a lot together. So
yeah.
Stoked to have both of you guys here. Sam and I, usually we kind of hold it down. And so anytime someone wants to pop on here, and especially for today's topic, because Alyssa, I know that you also dabble in other things outside of yoga as well, correct?
Yeah, a little bit here and there. Yeah.
Ooh, perfect. Okay. So I'll kind of start it off here, and then I'll just kind of pass the torch and let y'all share too, because I just want us to get familiar with each other, but also those who are going to be watching this after the fact to kind of get familiar with us as well. And even Alyssa, I know that you and I, we did jujitsu class together and we connected together, but we haven't really gotten to know each other on a deeper level. I just kind of watch what you do. And I think a lot of what you're doing, I totally stand for. I think it's awesome. So I would love to hear more about that. But in relation to the world of business and yoga, it's kind of, in my opinion, an awkward topic because I feel like yoga and business often get seen as separate things. And I feel like the more and more I've continued kind of my yoga journey, the more I've realized how important the business aspect actually is, but also honoring a space that feels more authentic to my yoga roots. So, for instance, my partner comes from a corporate sales background, and especially within the world of tech. And hearing a lot of the business structuring, processes, and just ways that they do things often feels very sterile, very kind of just, I don't resonate with it a lot. There's a lot of good takeaways from it, but corporate sales does feel a little sleazy to me sometimes, taking kind of manipulative approaches. And so I feel like I've taken a lot from that and recognized how can I move forward in a way with business that allows me to still stay very authentic with who I am and what I stand for, my values and whatnot. So over the course of the past, I think it's been 12 years now that I've been teaching yoga. It's crazy. I'm I don't even know how time has gone by so fast, but I feel like I didn't really understand the business aspect until I started working full time as a yoga teacher to try to survive. And I quickly realized how difficult it is for yoga teachers out here, and especially now. So back when I started, yoga was not overly saturated in the area. It was pretty condensed into one or two studios. And the studio that I met Sam at was a little hole in the wall, a little office suite that shared with a whole bunch of other different places. And I really noticed how hard it was then, even with it being so small and condensed and, basically only having so many places you could practice. But nowadays, I feel like there's yoga studios on like every corner, and there's so much is online. It's so plentiful. When I started working more into a full-time kind of working on my business, I realized, man, this is hard. Like if I'm going to continue working with just like studio classes, once a week or whatever. And first of all, just trying to sort out and figure out when you're available and like little puzzle pieces and putting them all together. I realized what a challenge it was. And nowadays, after opening Elevate and then selling Elevate and having to learn how to operate a business and actually own and manage people, like that part was absolutely wild. And we can get more into that too. But now I'm specifically in an online platform, and I'm stoked to share about this as well, because even in the past month or so, I've been doing online for the past year, but the past month especially, I've been trying new styles, new strategies to create a larger network and start to outreach to more people that weren't just in Modesto area, although I love you guys. And so I'm really, really excited to share some of the business components of especially marketing, sales, branding. I feel like I've had to lean into that because in an online world, you don't have just like your energy where people can like feel you and be like, oh, I totally vibe with you. I connect with you. Now it's like you have to show your personality, but you also have to put yourself out there. And it triggered every introverted part of myself. So it has been wild. But let's just go around and just share kind of what you do, your relationship with business within the world of yoga. Whomever wants to pop in.
I'll go. I think when I first started teaching yoga, I was in a space that I was ready to like leave everything I was doing before and go full in. And I think that a lot of people, I've talked to so many yoga students who have yoga teacher students, right? Yoga teacher trainees, that's what they're looking to do. And so they've come to me over the years, like, how do I leave my job and do yoga full time? And I remember when I was first starting, there was a yoga studio owner who also had a full-time job somewhere else. And I remember her saying, like, there's no way you can't make a living teaching yoga. And every bit of me like wanted to like fight that, like, okay, well, watch me. And then I also then became that person that then was telling yoga teacher trainees, like, it's a really tough to be able to just leave your job. And I had financial support, having a partner who was able to provide financial support for me to open my schedule to just teach as much as I could and go all in, where I can look back and know that if I did not have that partner at that time, I would not have been able to do that. Now, I think because we have this online community in business and yoga, and you get to learn so much, like there's so much free information out there about running businesses and about how you can do it. I think that like we're in a different place to be able to say, okay, it's not just teaching as many yoga classes as you can at yoga studios. Like that's not going to make a living. We know that. But now how do you get to the online platforms? How do you also work corporate yoga if that's what you want to do? How do you build your private clients if that's what you want to do? And there's so much information. So as saturated as it is, it's also this time of like, if I had all this information then, maybe I could have like gone off the bat starting like into the business realm of it and really learning how to make a living out of it. So that being said, that's kind of how I started. The idea of getting a business license to have to be a yoga teacher making $20 a class, you're just like, what? And it's so overwhelming. And now I'll tell yoga teacher trainees like, hey, it's really easy to get a business license. Taxes are actually like pretty easy. I think that we get really overwhelmed at, I'd rather just get the W-2. I'd rather just have that 9-to-5 job, because the idea of the business side just gets too overwhelming for some. But it's like once once you kind of learn it, like anything else, the first time you learned yoga, it wasn't easy. The first time you were learning these Sanskrit poses and names, like it wasn't easy. But then once you learned it, it actually is kind of more intuitive and easier, that not as overwhelming, right? So that's where I think I've come to now after 10 years is now that's what I tell yoga teacher trainees, like, hey, here's a blueprint. This is what you can do. And actually there's so much benefit that comes to being self-employed, like not just the being your own boss, but that there's tax benefits involved there too, of being your own business. There's a lot of freedom, I would say there. So that being said, that's where I'm at now is like, I'm also a body worker. So being able to bring yoga and body work, I don't really see them as separate. Now, granted, if I wasn't doing body work, I'd be doing what I was doing 5 years ago, which just wasn't working for me, more private, more corporate, things like that. But it's still all one business, my body work and yoga, and they build off of each other. They're not two separate businesses. So that's where I'm at. So still trying to maneuver like how much body work, how much yoga, how do I continue to integrate these two together? Because I don't really see them as separate. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's where I'm at now. Yeah.
Quick question to follow up on that real quick is, what do you think changed for you as far as realizing that doing privates and corporate work wasn't necessarily the direction that you wanted to move in?
I got burnt out from being so mobile. At first, I kind of liked it. And there's, to an extent, sometimes that I miss it a little bit too. But that was really what burned me out. It wasn't that I miss teaching in nursing homes. I miss teaching in like law and accounting firms. That's where I would kind of, focus my attention on when it came to corporate. And I see how much even now I look at it, I'm like, gosh, you can really scale. If you get into like the right business, that you're partnering with, you can scale your classes to make, hundreds of dollars per class. And, at the beginning I was like, $50 a class, which was so much more than a studio at the time. And like now, if you can continue to grow your business with partnering, then I would say like the sky's the limit. I mean, there's a hustle there. But that being said, I just kind of was like, I want to be in one spot. I'm kind of tired of driving around. So that was really the biggest thing that led me away from private and also private clients are willing to pay 4 to 5 times the amount of a yoga studio. But again, going to people's homes, and I still do some private events, but that's not what's running, that's not what's running my business so much anymore. Yeah. More retreats, more workshops. I'm definitely more in like the studio realm again of the yoga business part, and then building online with you. So yeah. Which is
we have so much more to grow in that direction too.
Yeah. Well, that's where I feel like, oh gosh, thinking of myself 10 years ago or 12 years ago, starting as a yoga teacher, it kind of feels like, I'm there again in the online kind of space. Feels that way.
And hello, Alyssa.
Hello. I was going to say, it's like that forever transition, like back to the beginning, because I feel like I still have imposter syndrome. Like I still, just as a teacher, and when I started, just when I was in my yoga teacher training, started recognizing I had already gone to school for business and I got an associate's degree. And so I was kind of like, okay, similar to what you were saying, Casey, like it's a little of like, there's some manipulation kind of things that is like very expected, I think, as far as being in the realm of just business in general. At the level when I was in college that they were teaching what business was. It wasn't like entrepreneurship. It's go and work for the corporation business. And it was like, well, that's That's uncomfortable for me. I felt like it was uncomfortable, but I always saw so much beauty in like startups, especially in Modesto. I had been able to work for a couple of people that had startup businesses, health businesses, and I always was like, wow, like just watching somebody take their passion and like turn it into something is the coolest thing ever. And so that's when I decided that I was going to switch my major to business. And so I got the degree and, went back to the work world. I was still in the working world when I went to my teacher training, and it was COVID. And so it was like weird because I was in teacher training during or right after COVID. I want to say right after, like during, in the midst of it, kind of 2021. So right after. But there was still a lot of things like in play. There was still a lot of learning, but also being taught that this might not be the most sustainable thing for you, because as you can see, look what happened, look what's happening to the world, and it was like, dang, okay, what direction do I take this? Because initially I didn't go to the training. I think like a lot of teachers, to become a teacher, I was just like, wow, I need a lot of healing. And I found it. And I was like, I want to learn more. Like, why do I feel this way when I leave? And so I found the training and I went through it. And after had that moment of like, this is the only thing I want to do. Like, this is all I want to do. I don't want to work. I don't want to waste my time. Like, why would I go back to a job and do something that I absolutely hate, or be a part of just like a structure? I think I always overgave myself to every job that I worked. And I recognized that at that point, like, oh, I'm an empathetic person. Oh, I can kind of see in between the gaps of things. Like, that's why you overshare and overgive and just commit yourself so hard. So that's when like that hustle kind of play came in. I always knew how to work hard, but when it came to myself and my own passions, I didn't really know what that looked like. So I started to just kind of drive with it and kind of paying attention to like, like where are the gaps per se, or what am I seeing that I could kind of fill into spaces. And a lot of what I started to realize, I've been teaching for about 3 years now, but a lot of my clientele in the beginning, I worked in a studio that it was like it was a member enclosed studio. So there was no like drop in kind of thing that could happen. So it was really hard for me to build like a clientele or like have students of my own, because they rested in the studio. So if I wanted to leave, I wouldn't have any clients, or any students. And I'm like, I feel like I need to branch out, but I was comfortable, very comfortable, and I found my comfort there. And eventually, I started kind of just doing like little pop-ups here, like, let me try this business thing. Like, let me make a online platform. Let me create a name, even if I don't have the business license yet, and just see what I could do. And so I found a space that was donated to me, and I just started to like, post on social media and see what would happen. And it worked. Like, there were just these little things that I had taken from, school that I was like, okay, I kind of get the gist of marketing, and I kind of understand how to, put myself out there. Very uncomfortable still to this day. I'm like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but one day at a time. And after that, I just kind of saw the beauty in people that don't do yoga already. Like, being in the yoga studio was really hard for me because I was only teaching yoga to people that already do yoga. And I'm like, wow, like where I come from and like my background and just like my community that I was raised in, like we don't value things like this. Like, there's, low income population, like you don't have access to things like this. When I did my training, that was like my first investment that I ever made. I was like, okay, I'm going to make an investment. But it was very foreign, to my family and everything. They're like, Alyssa, you're kind of out of your mind. You need to go back to work. Like, COVID just happened. What are you doing? But yeah, I just took the chance and started to do some donation-based type of classes and also some different like volunteer type of things because I struggled with wanting to make money off of it. Like, no, like I'm just doing it from the heart and I don't want any money. And now, 3 years later, I feel like I'm just now getting my footing, just now understanding the taxes and the write-offs and all of the things that at that point in the beginning, it was overwhelming for my mind because like, yeah, I want to do this, but like all these things I have to learn, plus I need to stay on my mat. I have to learn a whole practice to keep teaching, but then all that other stuff, I just kind of lived in the gray area for some time. Like, whatever, if the business part, if I get caught up in that kind of stuff, then I'll pay the fine or like I'll whatever, it was just like I'll take it. Like I'm doing what I love, like, and it made me a better mom, and it's just me and my son. So from the beginning it was like I'm not going to teach my son to go out into this world and just go along with the crowd and just do what they tell you to do. Like, no, we're not going to follow society. I'm going to teach him how to create, a life of his own. And so that's where, that's been my biggest motivation, going into the training. It was that I need to heal. I have a kid now and I need to know how to take care of myself. So now I have my footing a little bit. I have moved out of the yoga studio environment a lot more and into working with organizations. So I'm more in like the nonprofit world. So I do a lot of collaboration with nonprofits, and right now I have like a pretty good foundation with an organization that I've been able to partner with, and I'm more so in the process of developing like a wellness program rather than just having yoga classes that I go and teach to them weekly, but being able to work within the clientele range of it, but also with the staffing has been really cool to see how it helps the organization grow in both directions. So that's kind of what I'm working on now. And I was asked for a really long time, are you going to open a yoga studio? Do you want a yoga studio? And I was very adamant on like, no, like I'm going to be an online yoga teacher, like, but then as getting into the online world, I'm like, actually, I hate social media. And then I'm trying to work out of that now and accepting help from others that have a passion for it that can help me with just, I just wanted to teach and share, and somebody help me navigate this other world that I don't really understand just yet. So I'm kind of trying to balance the two and making them work together. And ultimately, I would like to have a space here in Modesto, but not a yoga studio, more so like a creative space, a community like creative space where there could be different forms of creative expression, like movement as one of them, but art, photography, videography, things of that nature, a lot of what the different populations and stuff that I involve myself in, as well as things that I see the youth are really interested in, bridging that gap between, I think, like professionalism and then youth, and getting them involved in spaces like that is really something that I'm passionate about now. And so that's kind of trying to get the framework of my own business together so that I could push in that direction is really my goal. Especially moving forward. It's nice, like moving forward into the new year is like, okay, I kind of feel like my head is like on top of my body now, not in my stomach, and I can push towards something, because I had so many, oh my gosh, I'm going to save the world. Yoga is going to save the world. Why don't you guys know about this thing called yoga? And now I'm like, okay, listen, one step at a time. Yeah,
I think it really is meeting people where they are and like the readiness of it. But I mean, it's like once you're there, once you kind of feel that passion within yourself, like I feel like yoga sells itself, it's like one of those things that if you're practicing and you're putting it out there, like people are going to start to notice that shift. And in my honest opinion, you are changing the world, right? Because it's like you are stepping into like you said, when you first started it, you were like, yes, I have to do this. Like, I know that I have to do this. I don't want to do anything else. Um, that's so brave, so courageous, but it also shows the power of the practice, right? So it's like, if you're going to move so boldly in that direction, that's such a strong, sorry, that's such a strong statement for people to see and to be like, wow, not only is this person extremely passionate about what they're offering, like, but they're also fearlessly just, I mean, maybe with fear, but you're courageously just kind of moving into a new direction, and basically making it your thing. And I think since 2020, so many people have recognized that the business that they were doing wasn't serving them. And because it got shaken up for so many different people, I still feel like people are calibrating and starting to find where they want to go. Last 2 years felt like absolute madness, but like universally. So a lot of different yoga teachers that I spoke with, 2023 and 2024 seemed a little bit better, but 2023 seemed like a really kind of like working through a lot of stuff for a lot of people. And I think that that's just the rearranging of life and just kind of finding your niche, finding your direction. And last year felt like a lot of people were gaining their bearings and starting to like, okay, I think I feel a little bit more of a direction, or I see that light at the end of the tunnel. And this year, I'm not sure if you guys feel it, but like literally, I am the person that likes to set New Year's resolutions. And I am very much like, I like starting on Mondays. I like starting on a new year, a new week, and all those things, because it feels like those days have a lot of power behind them. But this year feels different. It feels a lot lighter, a lot more expansive, but it's not just me. I'm noticing like a lot of other yoga teachers have like emerged and like kind of showing up as like this new essence. Do you guys feel that at all? Well, it just feels different, especially for me. I feel like I was kind of in that workhorse mode in 2023. I prioritized work over basically everything else. And that was the most draining, and I don't want to say unfulfilling, but I'm definitely going to. It was a year that felt soulless. I felt like a hollow shell of myself that was just, it was almost like I had worked in this like really deep and purposeful direction. And then I stopped to prioritize, working and finances and whatnot. And I sacrificed such a large part of myself that I felt hollow. I felt empty. And then it was like this huge reminder to me that it's like, it's not about the money for me. I really like, money comes when you're aligned. And I was not in an aligned space. It was just not equal exchange of energy. And that's when I had to refocus and kind of think, okay, I need to live based on my intention and moving forward. So in 2020, when we were kind of forced to go into an online platform, I had already through Elevate had like a little Facebook group that, I offered like free online content for people. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep it there. And anybody who wants to join it can pay like a small membership fee and, whatnot to enjoy the classes. And I hated it. I literally despised it. It felt so impersonal. It just felt so disconnected. And it wasn't just me. It was like my students felt the same, it's like I didn't even know who was practicing with me. And so after 2023, when I was just like having meltdown after meltdown, my boyfriend had always been the one, like little bird on my shoulder that was just like, you should do online classes. You would do really well with online. And like, have you ever thought about going online? And after like the millionth time of just like defending the space of like, I hate online and I hate like, that direction, I realized I hated the direction that I chose during that time, but it wasn't the only direction that I could go in the online space. And so I had to redefine what that meant for me. And even though I'm still just teaching to a camera, it feels so much more intentional this time around. It feels like I'm stepping into this new expansive space. And I'll just kind of quickly share because it's been wild. So when I opened Elevate, I had already been teaching for about 5 years. And so like various different studios locally. And so I felt very comfortable with the community. And so the day that I decided to open up Elevate, Sam was at my house and I was like crying and like, just, you know, I'm going to open up my own studio. And after a little bit of hesitation, there was full support. And we talked through it, and it was such like a positive shift and direction. But when I opened it, I had like this inner confidence and calm that I knew everything was going to be okay. I knew that I had spent the past 5 years like nurturing my community, and I wanted more for them. It wasn't a selfish kind of direction. And so that's exactly what happened. It was like, as soon as I opened it, people flooded in, and I didn't, it's going to sound really bad for me to say this, but I'm just going to be fully honest. It didn't feel hard to get people to come in the door. That part felt easy. It was just like, put it out there, they're going to come. I did social media and stuff like that, but it wasn't like I was super great at branding or super great at marketing or sales or anything like that.
I mean, I would disagree with that.
Let's hear it.
Well, I mean, I just think you are like naturally good at branding. Like you have an aesthetic, you always have. So I'm just going to say like,
fair enough.
You naturally have like a brand, like branding, I don't know, skills that have some sort of effect. They have to.
I have a vision up here.
Yeah.
So I maybe it's just staying true to that vision gives me that level. But can I just say, when I look back at like my marketing or my flyers from like the time of Elevate, I'm like, oh my God, like so cringe.
Right.
But yeah, you know, it was part of the vision and everything, but it felt pretty easy. And so like when I decided to move online, my mentality was so much the same. My mentality was like, you know, you've already built, you have it, now just put it out there. And then it was different. And that was when it kind of met me at this space of like real kind of, I butted up against every trigger within myself, because it's like your confidence feels so defeated when you put yourself out there for something, especially you're truly passionate about. And it's like you hit a roadblock and like nobody's engaging, nobody's joining, nobody wants what I have to offer. And it was just like this feeling of like sulking almost and being like, what is different? Like, what is going on? And then I realized like, yeah, like when you have a studio space, you rely upon the community that lives in that area, right? So you can nurture, you can get to know people just by going to a restaurant or going to events or whatnot. You're going to meet people, you're going to engage with them. And having been born in Modesto, raised in Modesto, and lived there my whole life, like I knew people out there. And so stepping into an online world, what I realized was all that marketing and all that was still going to the same people. It was still that one little local group of people, which great. And I very much appreciate all the support I have received and continue to receive from that community. But I moved into an online world to expand my horizon, to start reaching a broader audience. And so it's taken me into a whole new direction as far as how do you meet people online, and, you know, not to mention all the breakdowns of learning how to film and edit and storage space and all of that kind of stuff. It has been crazy this past
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine one, you know, just teaching online myself, like teaching to a screen. It's like, okay, you're kind of trying to find your voice again in the same way when you first start teaching in like an in-person space. It's like, okay, finding your voice as a teacher can take some time. And then it's a whole new thing online too. And you're like, are they connecting to my voice? And am I being authentic? Like not just showing up with the screen, but also on social media, which has always been my fear. I'm like, how do I show up authentically? Because this doesn't, like you, Alyssa, too, like this doesn't feel authentic,
yeah,
you know, to me. So it's a whole, you know, you're going to be like, feel those blocks. But I would say probably when you first started teaching, I don't know about you, Casey, but I felt it took me probably a couple years, 2 to 3 years, maybe, that I really like honed in on my teaching, like my voice, what I had to offer. And I remember like that's when I was getting a bit more feedback from people of like, oh, great class. Like I was getting a lot more of that when I was showing up, not trying to teach like Casey Hall, not trying to teach like Corinne Wallace, like really showing up of how I wanted to teach or what I had to offer. And so I can imagine it's very different, but also, or it's very different, but also somewhat similar maybe in the online world. Would you say, Casey, or no, it's really that different?
Yes, I can absolutely agree with that because, okay, so filming yoga teacher training, when I first started, it was like, okay, like when you're teaching like a normal class, you can, like you said, you can feel into people's energy. So you feel a lot more connected and you like, not that you know when you've done a good job, but you can feel that sense of reciprocation. You can feel that sense of like, okay, we're connecting, we're vibing, like they look good, like they're enjoying it. Okay, great. You know, based on what you're perceiving. And with online, you're just not getting that, right? So it's all just speculative, or sometimes I got in my head and I would overthink it, overplan it, and then it felt so scripted and I just hated that. Like, who am I talking to? And then after a while, I would say about like maybe a third of the way in through the training, I started to feel like when I was showing up, maybe because I had established more of a rhythm within it, that I felt almost like I started cracking jokes. And it's like I started doing those things. And like afterwards, I would go to edit and hear myself crack these jokes. And I'm like, who the hell are you talking to? Like, I know that there's someone listening on the other side, but like, I'm literally just entertaining myself in this moment where it wasn't necessarily like I was trying. I just felt comfortable. I felt comfortable just speaking like I was and like how I am, and not feeling as much as like, I know the information that I'm going to convey is going to be there. I know they're going to gain the knowledge, but I also want people to feel like they're receiving information from an actual human being, like a real person that has, you know, a really bad sense of humor. And, but when you are able to like really kind of tap into yourself and just like feel that, I did feel like it took me a while to feel that sense of comfort. And even still, like, I think as yoga teachers, let's say like we learn a new pose or a new transition or something like that, and we're like, ooh, I want to bring that to my students. It's like, you kind of have to work it out ahead of time, like, you know, because it's sticky and there's like weird little things you got to get through. And then once you kind of find that, it's so much easier. And then when you teach it in class for, you know, let's say the 50th time, it's like second nature. You already know the cues you're going to use and everything. So I absolutely agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Alyssa, so when you tried to like move into online, like how did that feel for you?
I was just going to say, I did 2 videos when I tried moving online, and I felt like the first video was like, okay, I can do this. My hang up before I even got started, and I think I'm just finding it now, like the voice and what I do want to share, and like what I feel like what feels authentic to me, like what aspect, like where do I start with what yoga, you know, the practice of yoga. Because when I started teaching, I realized that yoga was very much so, you know, and I'm sure, you know, it still is seen as just it's just the workout. And a lot of the classes that I would go to, it was just the workout. I still, to this day, I just started teaching a vinyasa class just last month, but I've never taught vinyasa before because it's just not my go-to. I didn't want to teach in an environment where I was like forcing myself to teach an upbeat practice because people want power and I got to make them work really hard. Like I was like, I think my journey with yoga, the first like 2 years was rest and restoration and healing and slowing down and teaching myself what that meant. And that's what I had to share. But that's not what a lot of people want when they see yoga. They're like, yoga, make me sweat. And I'm like, not my style, you know, like, no, I'm not the one, probably not the right teacher. So when I started to do the online thing, I'm like, well, what do I teach? Where, like, what is going to reach people? Do I just teach what I like to teach? Because like you said, there's nobody in front of me to feel I don't know how you feel. I don't know what people on the internet are already doing, what they're, what is the interest? It's so wide. It feels so vast. It's like you put it out there and who knows? Like, who knows where it could go? And so the first video that I did, I was like, okay, that was cool. At the beginning, I kind of tried to share like the background of yoga and like just a little bit that I'm like, okay, if somebody that's never done yoga before sees this video, maybe, maybe it'll reach them. Then I went to do the second video. And the first video, I'm like, I'm not stopping the camera. I'm just going to press play and then I'm going straight through. I have my little paper there and I know what I'm going to do. So I just go through it because if I pause it or if I have to come back, that's so inauthentic, like I don't do that in a class. So why would I do that on the camera? And so I did it the first time. And then the second time I could not do it. I was like, my friend helps me with the recordings, and it was like 10 times that I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know where I'm going with this. And I was like, let's just do it. And after that, I realized that there was just a lot of like inner work that I needed to handle and take care of, not in an overly exposed way. I was like, felt very overly exposed, very open. And it's just scared me as far as being confident in myself and having just that version of me out there for the world. I was like, I'm not ready for the world. Like I need a lot more time for myself because the world is big and the world can also be really ugly and mean. And I already know that side of the world, I already know that. And so it was like, I'm not ready. I need to heal from a lot of that I'd already had bad experiences just as a younger female on the internet. I used to be really into workouts and fitness and things like that. And so I had already put myself out there on social media. But I had some really bad encounters from that. And I just needed a lot of healing, because I realized I was scared of the online world. So I completely backtracked. I actually found a mentor for myself as far as helping me learn my voice and, who I am, and just on a deeper level to where I could speak. She was a speaking coach to actually help me, get those things out of me. What is keeping me from actually expressing and being okay with being in front of a camera and having all of my flaws, there on the screen for whoever the hell's gonna watch it. That was oh, that's really scary. So I haven't traveled back to it, but it is like you said, there's the light. I know it's somewhere in due time. I really instead of teaching online, I enjoy more of a podcast kind of setting. I've done a couple and I enjoy just talking with people now instead of feeling the obligation to teach somebody something. Just learning, just being with people until I really learn my voice.
Yeah, to me, it sounds like you know where you're going and it's not online right now.
Mm-mm.
I loved hearing what you're the nonprofit kind of work. I mean, my initial question is are you going to start, are you thinking of your business opening a non-for-profit type of business or a for-profit type of business when you think of a kind of community center that basically it sounds like yoga is the umbrella, not necessarily the physical practice of yoga, but overall everything else that yoga has to do with it. And I would argue too that there are more people that are looking for yoga that is not vinyasa. And I'm a restorative teacher, and the body work that I give, people who come to get body work from me, they just experienced yoga and they were just laying there, because I'm integrating the breath and the relaxation piece and, them practicing really all of, pratyahara. They're practicing all of that within, I guess, body work, but it's yoga is my umbrella kind of that holds that container. So I just think that that's what I'm hearing where you're going. And it sounds really awesome and beautiful. And maybe online just comes in later of even talking to teach other people how to start a non-for-profit type of yoga business. And not saying it might not be nonprofit, but I think I come from a social work background. So it's like, oh, I've always wanted to see like that integration happen because there's so many underserved populations that they don't want vinyasa, but they need to learn how to breathe. They need to learn themselves, like how much that's going to help their health. And luckily, yoga is becoming more and more accepted, which is why it's become more and more saturated. But I think in a really great way, because there's still so many people who haven't touched it. Right. So yeah, kudos. I like hearing about that. It makes me really excited. Yeah.
I do want to dive in deeper. I'll have a follow-up question, but I just wanted to throw it out there. So I 100% agree. Like even in the vinyasa world, there's a lot of like things that you can do, yin, restorative. And one thing that I used to like kind of think to myself was like, okay, like how do I teach? What are they receiving? The best helpful thing that I think about is like when you're in a studio, most vinyasa classes or yoga classes in general are all levels. And so you accommodate your level offerings based on who's there, right? So it's like if you have someone who has a lack of mobility and, you know, limited movements, you know how to modify to bring it to their level versus online when you don't see it, you don't really know. So that is probably the biggest takeaway that I have learned is I don't teach you. I do have all level offerings, but my offerings are a lot more specific now. So beginner focused, advanced focused. And that way, when I'm still giving options and variations, they're working within a realm that my viewer already expects. So if I have an advanced practitioner, they're going to click on the advanced practice and know that all the options are geared towards advanced, but just different levels of advanced. And the same thing with beginners. I'm giving like ultra beginner, but then I'm also giving beginners that are still like that might have learned a little bit more than, you know, the absolute beginner. And so that has helped me. Obviously, if you don't move in that direction, totally fine. But just if you ever did, like, just keep that in mind. The more specific you can become with who you're talking to, the easier it is to teach and know who's on the other side, you know?
Yeah.
But follow-up question. So I know I had saw you doing an event. I believe it was called So. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. So the So is like the framework goal for that community space. And the So stands for Seeds of Wisdom. So it was, it is a project. It's been in the works for, I say like about a year and a half now. But the initial goal was to, create environments, take up space where people can come together from, diverse backgrounds and just kind of share conversation and like-minded connection in a different scene per se, like not necessarily on the yoga mat, not necessarily like at the bar, but in a environment where people are looking to grow and just need those conversations to happen. And so that began with the intention, like up front, it was like, oh, I want to open this space, and then going into community and hearing a lot of people's needs, it was like, wow, a lot of people actually are craving spaces. It's a couple years past COVID and people are craving spaces where they can just hang out and create and do things that are fulfilling to their souls. But not everybody wants to do yoga. Like some people's form of creative expression comes in different ways. And I really wanted to like cultivate that and create a space here that if somebody has, with the mindset of one day, online is a goal for me. If I had a space where I can operate my business in, but also create a space where others that, are maybe at that starting point where they need the resources, they need the know-how, they need the lights, they need the props, they need all of the things, but they're at that forefront of their business and they don't have access to all of those things, but they have a driving point. How can I create a space for people that want that? And I was, like I said, donated a lot of spaces, multiple different spaces here, where people just were like, come use the space, like bring people into this space. We just want to see community. So it was like, wow, like people really want to see these things happen. But I personally feel like having something built together by community would really be the way, to get people into these spaces. But my goal was to make it a space that was accessible, so I went into community and tried to build a lot of connections with the driving point of like low income populations, underserved communities. But it kind of stopped there, because it's like, okay, but profit, in the business world, profit, but where's the profit, Alyssa? And I'm like, we just need to pay the bills. As long as the bills can be paid, like, why don't we help other people profit? I don't want the profit. And getting to a point where I was like, okay, everybody doesn't have the mindset that you have. Everybody doesn't do yoga, and your mindset is coming from, the practice of yoga. This is what we're teaching. This is what we want to see, is that community and that togetherness. But it's kind of foreign in just, in these populations where people don't trust people. People don't want to do business together. We don't want to collaborate if there's nothing on the end for me. And so it's been a challenge. It's been a challenge to really make it happen. But it's still the goal. It's still the upper end of the goal. I realized that I needed to build the framework of my own business first. Because I was kind of driving with the community. It's like, okay, community. Okay, everybody's not on the same page. Okay, focus on you. Find your voice, find your niche, find the things that drive you, build that framework. And so Sam, like you had mentioned, is it Sam or Samantha?
Sam.
Okay. Like you had mentioned, like integrating that nonprofit and for-profit world is where I'm at now, is creating the for-profit structure for my business, but then using that to build the nonprofit structure so that my business could be the container, and then the nonprofit could be what builds off of that. And so that is where the community aspect comes into play, rather than my own business being the community aspect of the building container, because I was finding myself, I definitely need money, but I don't want money, like, how can I do both? How can I really make an impact here in the community in places that I feel like it's really needed, but also
but you have to pay you have to put your own food on the table first, right?
Right. Like make sure that we can survive.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You might,
so this whole past.
Yeah, you might consider like, once too, like you're building your own business, like the nonprofit sector, you can either do it yourself or find someone who's willing to donate their time to do some grant writing, right? Where when you apply for grants to open up a space, like part of that grant is paying you, like paying your salary, like,
right.
So that's kind of, I can tell it's like this, that was like a path for me. And so I'm definitely like projecting a little bit, in terms of that, like, and maybe it still is like a future path for myself too. I'm about it, but like, just know that there's resources out there for nonprofits that actually would pay you to create it. So consider that.
Thank you. That's kind of where I'm at now, is just who do I go to? Who are the people that know these things, but also understand where I'm coming from as far as like what I want to see built, because it's foreign, especially here.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. You have to be very specific and have like the business plan and what you want to do and have all of that, of course. But just know that it doesn't have to mean that you're doing it totally for free and on top of your own for-profit part, right? It can like still bring you income to do that.
Because your salary is factored into the overall business costs.
Yeah.
So at least it's like your payroll is all going to be part of that, whether you have volunteers or you have permanent staff as well.
Right.
I think that's amazing. And nonprofit it's interested me. I haven't really looked into, all I know is obviously that you need a board or something like that, correct?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where I got hung up, because I had, a lot of people from the community. We were putting on events and making these events happen, and they were happening. We were like, okay, we did them donation-based events too. So we are just kind of taking whatever we would receive and just pouring it back. But people have whole lives, so making that drive with we're just also was gathering with people that were all from the same backgrounds. We don't have financial support. So it's like, how are we all going to keep driving with this and making it the forefront of our, of what we're doing when there's no income? And it wasn't reasonable. So having to make that ultimate decision to just kind of like, okay, we see it. We see that it's a need. And yes, it's like a beautiful thing, but back up. And that was like just a huge part for me. Back up, go work on yourself, go find out what's going on, like your financial blocks, these different things that you don't have the knowledge of. I joined like a, cohort in the community that teaches about nonprofits and government and all of these different things that I was able to learn a lot and, create connections and to share it. It was, an 8-month-long cohort, and the SO was the project of it. So by the end of it, it was like, okay, I got to go in front of people in the city and the community to share, hey, this is my project. This is what I'm working on. This is what I want to see. And that in itself was like, okay, that's okay. That right there, like you put it out there. Now you just do the steps. Now you need to drive with the connection point of it and find people that have the same interests and just keep going. So I took it out of like the driver's seat, and now it's like, okay, still the goal. I am now in the driver's seat. Yeah, I was just in the last 2 months or last 2 years survival mode, just hanging on. It's me. I've gone back and forth between, going and finding a job. Like, okay, I'm going to get a job. Go and work the job 40 hours a week. I'm going to work the job, and I'm going to be a yoga teacher, and I'm going to do this community stuff.
And just getting on back to that subject of the business of yoga. And what I was saying in the beginning is like, that's where so many yoga teachers end up finding themselves. Like, that's the truth of it, of like, it's hard to make a living teaching yoga. Like, that is true.
I think if you really if you have that, I loved how you said in the beginning, like now I tell teachers that, yeah, it's easy, because I would have loved to hear that, when I started, like, it is easy, but it's always been like, you sound crazy, Alyssa. And I'm like, whatever. And the same thing, like that was always, I try to collaborate with a lot of people, and it would be like, well, you're kind of like far off, Alyssa. Like you have like that's a big dream. And I'm like, cool, thanks. I'm going to go fulfill that now. Like, it was definitely a driving force, and it still is to have people tell me like, probably not going to work. I'm like, okay, thank you.
Thank you for your opinion.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think
at the same time, all of the yoga teachers, including Casey, Jason Crandall, the big kahunas, they will all say too, like they started out like, how the hell am I going to make this work? Like, this is what I want to do. And they've all done it. And that's where I say, like, that's where it's easy comes from, because it's like, once you're doing it, you're like, oh, like, it's happening. But then you do look back and you're like, wow, blood, sweat, tears, doubt, all of the things were there. And that's everyone who stuck with it. But it takes that. Like, it does take that.
I would say like one thing that's been extremely helpful for me was, so I don't pay for any coaching or anything like that right now. I can't wait to be able to have a coach that I work with on a regular basis, which let me also say, I come from a background that looked at coaching like a total scam. And that's always how I was raised, is like, oh gosh, a life coach, this or that. Like, that is so cringe. And I put a lot of thought into it this year because I realized I was stepping into a direction that I had never done before. And therefore, I've always been the kind of type that's very self-taught. Like, I can figure it out. Like, I will figure it out. But then I really realized, like, yes, I can figure it out, but if I could get help and guidance from someone who's already doing it and doing it well, they're going to save me a lot of hardship. They're going to save me a lot of breakdowns and be able to get me where I'm going at a much more rapid rate than I could do by myself, not to mention having support from a community and, you know, those types of things. So this past year, moving into the online world, Sam actually sent me an Instagram, this girl, Jamie C. She is, I love her. She's amazing. She's so brilliant when it comes to, she's been in the online world for a long time, but she just works with fellow entrepreneurs.
Can I just say she started out as a hairdresser? How amazing.
Crazy. Crazy. And she's so inspiring. And so I started absorbing, like, I had just started this online business. So it's like all my money is just going into my business. So it's like, I'm like, okay, I can't really afford to like take on one of her bigger programs right now. So I'm going to absorb all of her free content. I'm going to watch every live. I'm going to take notes. I'm going to watch like any freebie I can get from this woman. And so that, I cannot even explain how much that has been helpful for me over this past year. And it has completely changed my perception of what a coach is. And I realize, yeah, there are plenty of coaches out there that are happy to scam you out of your money. But then there's also plenty of coaches out there that like literally genuinely love what they do the same way we love teaching yoga and want to help others to be able to reach that same thing. Because if you think about it, like that's our intention as a yoga teacher. We want our students to have those same breakthroughs and those same revelations of like self-love and acceptance and connection. And like we've had it ourselves. And so naturally we're like, I need to share this with other people. I want others to have that same experience. And so it's like, it only makes sense that that applies to anything that you feel passion with, right? So it's like if someone has moved into a different direction, and for the sake of this example, an online coach, right? It's like she's doing it, she's thriving in it, and she loves it. And now she has the skill set to be able to help other people do the same things. And like, I started really like, it clicked in my brain where I was like, there is so much value here. And what I really crave right now is that community aspect. Like these pod shops are great because I feel like we're just able to connect and talk about all these different ideas and directions. And like kind of going back to what you said too, Alyssa, is like you're waiting to find the right people to collaborate with. And when the timing is right, you're not going to have to find those people. Those people will already be there. They're going to be waiting for you to get to that point of readiness. And so I feel like in these like kind of like little discussions and groups, it's like those communities are already being built and developed and grown, that it's like we're going to look back in hindsight and be like, oh, that's why I did those things. Oh, I met this person through just deciding to hop on this one call or like whatever it might be. So that practice of like working on yourself is building that, even if it is on a very subconscious level, you know, it's just, it's happening between the lines almost. Do you guys work with coaches or anything like that specifically?
I have worked with two different ones, not consistently. I am in a space now where I've recognized the more I've moved out of the studio space and not having like a consistent teacher. I do a lot of online practices. I feel like you're my teacher, Casey. You are my teacher. But like having that, you know, like one-to-one, like communication like this, that's definitely something I'm missing, and have been for like probably like the past year now. Cause you know, yoga teacher training, it's like all of that all at once. And it's like, okay, I feel like so supported and ready. And then you're out of the training and it's like, wait, hold on, where does that come from now? So yeah, probably for about, I did a training, or like an online kind of coaching for about, like, I did like a year and a half after my, yoga teacher training with a guy that was in the UK. And we did, meetups like this on a weekly basis with, a community of people. And it was really nice. But it did come to an end. And even after that, it's like, I'm a constant, I need to learn more, I need to grow. And in those, transition periods, I find myself like, okay, yeah, like I'm a self-taught person, very driven as well, but I am definitely seeing the ways in which I crave, just having someone there to, hey, this is my idea. Hey, I need guidance. I find I get in my ego a lot more when I don't have a consistent teacher, to kind of just go back to on a consistent basis.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree with that.
I am pro coach. I love coaching. I've gotten coached in so many like areas of my life. So I've had life coaches and business coaches. And when I don't have a coach, like I go through a hiatus where I'm like, okay, I'm good right now. Then I'll invest money in like therapy instead. That's usually when I need like more therapy. They're totally different things. And I get really frustrated when people put up their nose to life coaches as if life coaches are trying to be therapists, because it's totally different, especially if you receive both therapy and coaching. Like they're completely different. Coaching is about like, what are your goals? Let's move forward, like literally coach, and being able to recognize like certain patterns, not like psyche patterns necessarily, maybe thought patterns that are blocking you. But I like coaches specifically who have a model that they're working off of, versus just someone that's like, oh, I'm here to coach you through. I like someone who's like maybe gone through a coaching certification process. Like I look at, or certification program. So I look at, do they have a model approach? Because like you said, coaches can just like say, give me a lot of money and I'm going to coach you and we'll just get online and chat. The life coach school through Brooke Castillo, our friend, has also done it. Natalia. So,
okay. That's the one.
yeah, there's like a specific model that they adhere to, which is really like a thought model. So it's mind management. So I've worked with that model and with different coaches under that school specifically through business. And like, there was even one that was under that school when I was getting a divorce. So it was like, okay, the coaching was really about a divorce coach, like how to heal from that. I have had eating disorders. So I had an eating disorder coach for a year, which completely changed my relationship with food. So yeah, I'm pro coach all the way. I'm looking for another coach this year, I think, to kind of get me. I kind of made all of my goals in the last 5 years. And I feel like I'm starting at the beginning again of like, okay, trying to get clear on like, okay, what's next? Like, where do I see myself? And a coach is just so invaluable to helping you get clear on like what you want. So yeah.
I love that. And I don't doubt it for a second, Sam. I feel like he's just craved like knowledge and expansion in that way. I'm kind of curious because I don't want to take up too much of y'all's time, but because we're already there, but I would love to know where y'all stand as far as what are your you think your biggest, anything relating to business that you feel is your biggest hang up right now, like the biggest block. I'll go ahead and like segue this in first because I recently met one of my deepest triggers that I have ever had in my entire business life. So in relation to networking online for me, over the past 2 years, because I was going through so much internal like change and just, it was a dying process. I had to like, the old version of myself had to die for my new self to emerge. And through that period, I became extremely introverted. And I do think I am an introvert, but I'm really good at extroverting. Like when I need to put my energy out there, I can turn that switch on. But the past 2 years, I did not have the energy or capacity to like socialize or have even like a call like this would have been completely a no. And so I felt like having gone in deep into that introversion, when I moved into an online world and I have to get to know people, the extroversion felt so hard. It felt I like didn't know how to do it. Like I had forgotten how to socialize and how to connect. And so I was talking to my boyfriend one day, and I was like, what do you think I can do to like get out there and like meet new people and like, and he was like, well, you should be contacting and reaching out to new people on social media like every day. Like you should be starting conversations with these people. And I'm like strangers? And he's like, yeah, like have a conversation with them, like bring it up, like dialogue. You don't have to sell them anything. Like you're getting to know them. Like it's not like you're marketing anything. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, you know how to talk to people. And it's like when he said that, there was like this like feeling inside of me where I'm just like, I am really good at talking to people when they approach me. I have always been that person. It's like, if you can start a conversation with me, great, I'll talk to you all day. But I don't know where to start because I don't care about us talking about the weather or those kinds of things. Like, I just don't know where to begin. And I feel like it's hard to find that connecting point with people. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to make a goal for myself and I'm going to reach out to 10 people every day, 10 new people. Whether they respond back to me or not, I'm just going to connect to 10 people. Oh my gosh, everything has shifted. Like the very first outreaches, I was sweating, profusely sweating. I was feeling like kind of an imposter. Like I felt like who am I? Like these people don't know me. They're like for me to just reach out to them and start a conversation or want to like build a dialogue with these people, like they're not going to care. And what I realized was the exact opposite. Like by putting myself out there, I was being genuine. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just wanting to get to know you. It has been insane, the amount of people I have met just in the past month of just putting myself out there. And so what I realized was my biggest roadblock was identifying as something when I was so much more than that. Mm-hmm. To call myself an introvert and say I'm not like, I don't like to talk to people. I was creating this image in my head of me being small and all these people out here in the world were going to somehow find me here. And as soon as I expanded out and allowed myself to be seen, the validation even, just the feeling of like, okay, there's confirmation all around me of my words are really powerful. So if I want to say I'm an introvert, I'm going to keep myself in that space. If I'm going to refer to my business as my small business, that's how it's going to be. If I'm going to say it's a struggling start, I'm going to feel that every day. And I need to change my verbiage in order to actually align myself. Like that's when it clicked for me. True manifestation is changing those programmed thoughts. It's not necessarily just trying to trick yourself to believe something else. It's recognizing the things that you deeply believe about yourself that actually are not true.
Amen.
Yeah,
true.
So how about y'all? Yeah.
So I'll just say that I am in a place where I need to, like I said, I'm kind of feel like I'm at the beginning again. So right now, my intention is to get clearer in my vision with hiring a coach, about to do a vision board in a couple of days where that will help become a little bit more clear. But I would say right now I have a block of just like, I'm not clear on what I want. And so I know as soon as I decide what I want, all the blocks will come, right? All the thoughts that manifest as words like are going to show up. And I don't know what those are yet. So TBD.
Yes. I'll be here for you. Any phone call you need.
Yeah.
I would say right now, mine is definitely learning how to create a schedule. Mm. And not just a work schedule, but how to really maximize my time. And I still have the mindset of a 9 to 5 working mother. So moving away from that and realizing that I have freedom because I've created the space by doing this, by doing what I actually enjoy doing. I haven't allowed myself to fully accept that and step into it to say, like, yes, you are doing this. I can recognize that I have a huge fear of abandonment still. And it plays a big part in my business, thinking that one day all of my clientele is just going to fall off the face of the earth. And, so moving past that to really be able to view my time as whatever I want to create it to be, is something that I'm really focused on now, especially just when it comes to when I view my life. I see, life as, me, my son, and then the things we do together, and then work after that. And being that work doesn't look like work to me, sometimes it gets intertwined into the things that I want to prioritize. It's like, okay, this like 2 hours is for me and my son to do X, Y, and Z. And then I find him saying, Mommy, why are you on your phone again? And I'm over here replying to an email or doing something that is like, yes, Alyssa, like you need like learning how to divide my time up to where it's like this time at this point of the day, you can reply to your emails, this time you can do laundry at any point in your week, but you need to decide when you're going to do it, because then I find myself like, yeah, that is the freedom of having my own business, is getting to do things when I want it, but I don't know when I want to do it yet. So deciding that.
I love that because I feel like that's establishing entrepreneurial boundaries for yourself. Mm-hmm. And it's hard because I feel like when you do work for yourself, you don't clock in, you don't clock out. So you always feel clocked in. And that was one thing that, I still struggle with that. I'm usually working from the time I wake up to the time, like I put my phone down at the end of the night. And I probably need better boundaries with that as well. But I noticed that it happens all the time. And so it's like, I totally get you, like having some kind of structure that keeps you fully present in what you're doing while you're doing it without feeling like your attention is spanned out into all these different things that are receiving now lesser attention, especially for the things that matter the most, right? Like the people.
Yeah, I let my business matter the most last year. And I just could see by the end of this year, I switched it off like last 3 months of the year. And I recognized a lot of the kind of, resistance there was between me and my child, that I was like just becoming an overwhelmed, overstimulated mom. And I'm like, I've always been so good at this, I've always been so good at kind of managing it. But it's like, change, and he changes, I change, and we feed off of each other a lot. So now that he's much more aware and he's a very present little person himself, I'm like, he actually wants me to be fully present, with him now. Whereas I used to give him the full presence and he learned it. And now he's like, hello, that. And I'm like, dang, now I need to figure it out. So yeah, entrepreneurial boundaries. I love that.
Mm-hmm. Sam, that makes me think of you giving a massage and responding to an email at the same time.
What do you mean? I've never done that.
I know. I was just thinking about how divided our time can be. And I just like literally visualized. I'm like, I can imagine like you're working and then it's just like,
right. That is the challenging part about, yoga and massage too, and having people would be shocked at the amount of emails that a yoga teacher and a massage therapist has to, like, I also have a lot of that communication going on. And I'm realizing like, oh, that's a part of my work day too. Not just like how many, people can I serve today. Right. And then especially when I was mobile, that was the mobile part was hard because right now in between my clients, I set aside, at least half an hour in my own space where okay, if I need to respond to an email in the middle of that time, like I can do that, or respond to a quick text, I can like do that. Where when I was just driving from place to place, like on my phone while driving, that's probably not safe. And, so that being said, it's
Thank you for that, Sam.
just to say it's probably not safe.
Reminder.
I've never done that, I promise, But I would have to like make sure I had that do not disturb, like I'm driving kind of thing on, because it was like tempting to just be like, oh, I'm in the middle. Like, but that being said, what was I going to say? Oh, it's just the entrepreneurial boundaries. That time, it is a work in progress. Always. I still haven't totally figured that one out. And yeah, it's so important. I mean, even my partner, and I don't have children, but my partner is like, hey, can you just not go to your phone? Well, no, I got to respond to this client, right? Versus like, no, 6:00, I'm done for the day. Like, and my clients have to just understand and really realize that clients and people understand that. But I think when you are kind of in that hustle survival mode too, you're like, this is going to be like, what if I miss that? And then right, it's a deal breaker for them, or something, and it's so much, like reputation that you feel like you have to hold up as a business owner too. But the more and more I've allowed myself to let go and not have to respond kind of right away, the more I've learned like people have their own lives too. Like there's so much grace that our clients are willing to give us and that other people are willing to give us, that we're the ones putting that pressure on that time, not really them putting that pressure on us. So yeah, it's a
even the people that do put that pressure on, you probably don't want those people anyways.
Exactly. Yeah.
I need my massage now, lady. Sorry, you're 6 months booked out.
I think a really challenging part of the boundary building for myself is that a lot of my clientele or students started off as like close friends and family for me. Mm-hmm. So as time went on, it was like, everybody's my friend, like, hey friends, how are we doing today, friends? And then it's like, well, then your friend becomes, or even if it's a student that becomes your friend, and then it's like, hold on, how do I navigate this friendship now? Like, do I put, and so even for me, it's like boundaries with work, but also just in relationships. In relationships in all aspects and areas of my life that I never thought I'd have to make. One of my friends asked me recently, like, what are your goals, like long term? And I was like, honestly, I think I genuinely desire to have like an open door policy to my life, because I don't. Because once I realized I needed boundaries, I just immediately was like, everybody, like, no access to me, like very minimal access, very far and in between. And I would love to get back to a point where if somebody needed me, they could give me a call and I'm there to answer, like in a good amount of time. Whereas I'm like a week, maybe a week and a half, I'll get back to you, So I think ultimate goal for me is really nailing in those boundaries for myself so that I could be more openly available for, the people that I love and truly like care for.
Mm-hmm. Can I give you a tool real quick? Would you take? It's called, one of my coaches gave me this and it really helped. And it's helped my partner too, because he's a business owner. So it's called Monday Hour 1. And on Monday, like for 1 hour, you give yourself time where you literally, look at your calendar and you put in 1 hour, you're going to focus on emails, and you put in when you're going to do that. And you can do that to the extent of when you do your laundry, when you're giving time with your kids, you're literally planning out. It's like meal planning, but it's like you're planning out your schedule. And at first it feels like, that gives me like less freedom. But now that I do it, it like gives me more freedom. It's like, I have scheduled this time to put my phone away, or I have scheduled this time to like be with my partner or watch TV or do my laundry or like whatever that is. So it's called Monday Hour One. It's like, okay, all you have to do is set aside 1 hour on a Monday. And it's usually less time than that. It's like, this is when I go to the gym. And of course, then like when that time comes, like, maybe something else has come up anyway. But when you actually see it on your calendar, if you use your phone, that's how I use it. I'm like, oh, I have scheduled this. And I've noticed too that I'll say, okay, it'll take me 1 hour to do my emails or whatever that is. It'll take me 1 hour, and it really literally will take me 1 hour. If I set aside 2 hours, it'll take me 2 hours. It's like manifestation, right? So it's like, when you say like, I'm doing it for 30 minutes, like it actually takes 30 minutes. So you also are surprised at like how that like makes your time so much more efficient. So it's one of my favorite tools. It's called Monday Hour One. And whenever Will and I do it, we're like, let's do it. We have like the best week ever.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
That is really helpful. It actually reminds me of a yoga student at Elevate. I've known her since like the beginning. And she moved into real estate and got super busy with real estate, but was still like super regular in classes. And it's funny because she was like, yeah, I tell my clients, like, I'm sorry, I'm booked during that time. And she goes, and in my schedule, it says yoga. And she goes, and nobody needs to know why I'm busy during that time. Like, it's none of their business. And this is my time. And I get to decide like how I delegate my time. And this is for my self-care, and it's non-negotiable. So I'm unavailable during those times. And I love that, because I feel like if we do have free time, we feel like it's selfish for us to like claim it only as ours and to say, I don't have time, because it's like, you know, if someone was to be like, well, you have time here, or you're not doing anything here, you're not teaching at this time. And it's just like kind of understanding like, yeah, just the healthy boundaries of like, we do still need to have that time to like honor just even ourselves, you know, and like our self-care practices.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Monday, Hour One.
And you don't have to do it on a Monday. Obviously, if Sunday is what works for you, that's just like what she calls it, is like Monday Hour One, get it done. And you write your schedule for the week and like adhering to it like in a flexible way. It's exactly what you're saying. Like, you don't feel like, oh, I have this time, what should I do? And then you're sitting there focused on like, well, I should do this and I should do that. And then like time gets away.
Nothing gets done.
What'd you say?
I said, and then nothing gets done.
And then nothing gets done. Exactly.
Your fullest expression. Like, I feel like I dibble in this and then I dabble in that. And then by the end of it, I'm like, hey, we got a couple things done.
Yeah, right.
I feel like that's New Year's resolutions, right? It's like you have such lofty like expectations for this new direction or how you're going to step into it. And so it's like, I'm going to go from doing everything that I was doing to like making a full 180 switch in every aspect of my life to the fullest extreme. And it's like, yeah, no wonder we burn out after like a month of doing so, because we lack balance to be able to maintain that kind of thing, right? It's like just to push. And like, I think I fall on that end more, where it's just like, okay, like you have got to take time for yourself, because if you're not, like the rest of it just ain't working. Like, you're not going to be able to do any of these things. You're not going to help a damn person if you don't have time to meditate, if you don't have time to get on your mat or move your body in some kind of way, go outside, get some sunlight. Like, you know, it's like you just realize how important it is to have that kind of connection and structure, but also just appreciation for yourself and knowing like self-care first above all of that. You know, it's like that is a part of business. Like, business is straight up spiritual. It is so spiritual, because you will learn every blockage that there is to be learned in business about yourself, all of the different things that hold you back, and also your why. I feel like the why is such a huge part, you know, in business, and why we get so burnt out is like we are driven by money, or we're driven by some external factor that it's like, you know, you're just in this rat wheel. But it's like, if you have a solid, purposeful why, and you can tap into that, for me, that's the foundation of any business, because you're going to always have that why to carry you through the hard times. For me, the little extra money does not carry me through a hard time. Like, that is like, it's too surface level for me. It's like, if my soul hurts, it's going to have to realign and switch to something else. And so having that strong why for me is the foundation of my business. And I think a lot of people, especially like, you know, working those 9 to 5s, there is no why behind it aside from like financial stability, you know, which is, it's great, but I think we're starting to realize that there is so much more expansion outside of just that kind of model or structure, that we can do that
Right.
for ourselves.
Or they have figured out the why, right? Like a lot of people, I think I watched or listened to like a Hidden Brain podcast, but that people are happier or more fulfilled in their lives. Like, even think of like someone who's, we think of like a garbage truck guy. You're like, why would you do that job? That job must literally stink. Right? But they actually feel fulfillment if they focus on why they're doing it. I'm doing this to not just be financially stable, but I'm also helping clean up the streets. I'm helping people, you know, get rid of, like, they're figuring out what that why is. And so even if you're in the 9 to 5 job and you're trying to get a full-time yoga job, it's like, okay, remembering like why you're doing that, like that's going to bring you more fulfillment in everything that you do. Right. Yeah.
I
gotta
loved this conversation, guys.
Me too. I know.
Great.
We could keep talking.
And thank you, Alyssa, for deciding to jump in.
Thank you for having me. This was
I know
great.
we've been trying to connect and get this going. So I would love to talk more with y'all. So let's plan something for a future topic where we can continue kind of exploring some things. And yeah, that's
Or
it
just
for
see
now.
where we're at in all of this. Maybe a few months.
Right, the development.
Yeah. I would love
All
to.
right, y'all. Well, you guys have a wonderful Thursday, and I'll be
Happy
seeing
New Year.
you. Happy New Year.
Enjoy the rest of your week.
Bye bye.